The federal excise tax imposed on small breweries and craft distilleries is an outdated policy that, while originally intended to increase profits and regulate alcohol production, now places unnecessary burdens and strict guardrails on small businesses. Although Congress has taken steps to alleviate these burdens through partial rate reductions under the Craft, Beverage, Modernization, and Tax Reform Act, small producers are still finding it difficult to compete due to excessive taxation and unreasonable compliance costs. The federal excise tax, in its current form, hurts small businesses by restricting growth and decreasing economic development within the booming craft beverage industry. By a per-unit basis, the Internal Revenue Code imposes excise tax on beer and distilled spirits. For small brewers who produce fewer than 2 million barrels a year, the rate is $3.50 per barrel for the first 60,000 barrels produced annually. For the next 6 million barrels, the rate jumps to $16 per barrel. For distilled spirits, small producers pay $2.70 per proof gallon of the first 100,000 proof gallons and $13.34 per proof gallon on the next 22,130 proof gallons, with larger producers paying the full rate of $13.50 per proof gallon. Even with these updated prices, this tax structure still massively affects small businesses that operate on narrow margins, with large breweries easily able to keep up with these expenses. The craft beverage industry has become a large piece of local economies throughout the United States. According to the Beer Institute and the National Beer Wholesalers Association, the U.S. beer industry contributed about $146.3 billion to the economy and sustained a workforce of more than 565,000 jobs in 2024. Small breweries contribute a large portion of those total numbers by increasing tourism, hospitality, and manufacturing sectors. However, the current excise tax structure is so backbreaking to these small businesses that they are forced to ignore potential reinvestment and expansion opportunities and halt local hiring. The federal excise tax must be amended to eliminate the first-tier rate for qualifying small producers, which will allow for increased growth and sustainability in this bubbling sector. The current federal excise tax on alcohol was designed to ensure compliance with government restriction on alcohol sales and increase the revenue that the government was able to collect by maintaining control over the production and sale of alcohol. At the time of this law's implementation, these ideas were relevant. However, the modern alcohol industry operates under an entirely different environment that leaves these laws somewhat obsolete. Today, small producers are heavily regulated through the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau, state-level agencies, and incredibly strict licensing requirements. With all of these new regulatory instructions to comply with, the continued implementation of these federal excise taxes no longer serves a meaningful regulatory purpose. Instead, these taxes function as a limitation on innovation for small businesses. The excise tax is particularly detrimental to small breweries and distilleries because it is imposed at the time products are removed from bond, which often comes before the producer has generated any actual profit from sales. This frequently forces small businesses to divert funds meant for marketing, expansion, and product improvements in order to pay these taxes. Overall, these excise taxes limit small breweries and distilleries' ability to compete with larger corporations that can absorb these costs with ease. The structure of these excise taxes also disproportionately affects smaller brewers. Due to the taxes being imposed at a per-unit basis, it hurts small operations much more. Larger businesses have such a massive profit margin that the impact of these per-unit taxes are not as significant, while smaller breweries and distilleries face much higher tax rates compared to their revenue. This imbalance discourages small businesses to enter the market and lessens competition, undermining the very diversity in business that drives the American economy as a whole. The federal excise tax should be amended to permanently remove the first-tier rate for qualifying small producers. Specifically, Congress should amend U.S. Code 26, Sections 5001 and 5051 to set the first 60,000 barrels of beer and the first 100,000 proof gallons of distilled spirits at a $0 tax rate for small breweries and distilleries that produce an amount below a certain threshold. This would provide the most significant relief to small businesses while still maintaining higher tier taxation for larger corporations. Congress has already illustrated precedent for tax relief to targeted parts of the beverage industry. The Craft Beverage Modernization Act, first introduced as a part of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 and later made permanent through the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021, introduced lower excise tax rates for small producers. These changes led to record growth in the craft beer and spirits markets. While this was a good start, the remaining first-tier tax system still places unnecessary barricades on small businesses that decrease their ability to reinvest in new and better equipment, develop their workforce, and create new marketing ideas and tourism-related activities. Repealing the first-tier tax rate would directly support entrepreneurship, create jobs, and strengthen local economies. For example, a brewery producing 5,000 barrels annually would save approximately $17,500 per year, and a distillery producing 50,000 proof gallons would save about $135,000 per year. These savings could be reinvested into business expansions, whether that be the expansion of workforce, real estate, or distribution. People against repealing the federal excise tax argue that it could lead to a decrease in federal revenue or an increase in alcohol consumption. However, these concerns are heavily overestimated. The lost revenue from eliminating the first-tier rate for small producers would amount to a tiny fraction of overall federal tax income. In addition, small breweries and distilleries typically sell premium, low-volume products that commonly come with little to no price elasticity, meaning the repeal would not significantly affect consumer prices. Public health compliance would remain intact through state-level alcohol control systems and existing higher-tier federal rates. Overall, the potential repeal of the first-tier excise tax shows fairness and economic opportunity. It demonstrates that tax systems should not disproportionately affect the growth potential of small businesses. This modification would stimulate small business, preserve American manufacturing traditions, and strengthen local economies. By prioritizing small producers, Congress would act upon its stated commitment of supporting entrepreneurship and small business development. The federal excise tax on small breweries and distilleries is an outdated policy that no longer serves the purpose it was drafted to. While originally designed to raise revenue and regulate alcohol production, the current environment of alcohol sales does not require such invasive taxation. Today, the tax only serves to stifle growth and innovation in one of America's most dynamic industries. Eliminating the first-tier excise tax would allow small business to reinvest their funds into operations, hire additional employees, and open more locations, which in turn would contribute even more federal income and job creation, fueling local economies and therefore the American economy as a whole. In conclusion, Congress should amend U.S. Code 26, Sections 5001 and 5051 to set the first-tier rate at $0 for qualifying small producers. Given the modest impact to federal tax revenue and the significant benefits to local communities, the repeal of the federal excise tax on small breweries and distilleries represents an obvious and necessary policy reform.